G'day, welcome along. We've just had minor technical issues, but we are all here tonight for a live stream. Welcome to a very special panel. It's the first time we've actually had a special guest. Peter Ridd is joining us, and of course the boss is here as well. Big night ahead, and of course you can participate in these live chats. 1300 857 466 is our telephone number, and those lines are open right now. We've got 7 of our staff. We've said this before, we'll say it again, they're not in a call centre in China or Malaysia or anywhere else. They're right here in the heart of Queensland where we are coronavirus free.
Yeah, and they pay the taxes in Australia, not overseas.
Yeah,
so
they do.
anyway, great. I'm so proud to actually bring to you tonight Peter Ridd. Hi Peter, great to have you on board with us. Peter, are you still employed?
Get on that microphone, Peter, so we can actually
No,
hear you.
I'm definitely not employed, or not at James Cook University. No, I was fired, and I'm certainly not back there yet.
Well, for those of you who aren't familiar with Peter Ridd, he was a former JCU professor, and he's spent decades studying the science of climate, and in particular, the Great Barrier Reef, which is the heart and soul of not just Queensland, but also our tourism here throughout Australia. And he dared question the science that was being taught to students. Peter, you know what? I've never been sacked in my life. I've come close a couple of times.
Yeah, well, I've only been sacked once, and it took quite a lot of effort, actually,
I see.
to happen. But yes, unfortunately, if you question the conventional wisdom on the reef, what I was saying was that there's not enough quality assurance on the science. It's not a welcome message, which is a great shame.
Peter, you need to explain to people your background. So what gives you the authority to speak as you do with regards to the reef, and actually what happened?
Well, I've been working on the reef for about 35 years. I was a physicist originally. We looked at water currents, movement of sediment, and a whole lot of things associated with the biology as well. And we were actually, with my group and a whole lot of other scientists I worked with, we did a lot of work on movement of sediment, especially, from agriculture and this type of stuff. And we were finding that, no, the farmers are not killing the reef. But unfortunately, our message was being completely ignored. And a lot of the supposed evidence saying that reef was damaged, we were able to demonstrate quite conclusively. It was just wrong. And it rapidly became apparent that the quality assurance processes with a lot of the science institutions just weren't up to it. And that's basically what I said. We've got to sort out the quality assurance so we know it's right or whatever. And unfortunately, that's what got me fired.
Yeah. 1300 857 466 is our telephone number. If you'd like to speak about any of the issues tonight, particularly climate science and particularly Great Barrier Reef related material. So Peter's here to take your calls. I know that he's got a great wealth of experience. And of course, we'll be talking about some of the issues. In particular, there's new regulation that's been imposed on farmers, primary producers right up and down the east coast of Queensland in particular. They are called reef regulation laws. Peter's the number one expert to talk about that. So if you are in I think there's 7 zones, Peter, is it, in Queensland?
Oh,
How
I'm
many
not sure
zones is there?
Well, I'm actually not sure exactly, but essentially the whole of the Great Barrier Reef comes under a special legislation. It's from the Mary River north. It's actually not much north of Brisbane. All the farms on the eastern seaboard are come under these extra regulations, which greatly restrict the use of fertiliser, pesticides and this sort of thing. And it won't do any good for the reef. It won't make any difference for the reef.
It's incredible. 1300 857 466 is the number if you want to have a chat tonight.
I want Peter to explain to people about coral bleaching.
Yeah, okay, so coral bleaching is, it's not an agricultural problem. It's supposedly caused by an increase in temperature. The coral inside the little coral polyp, there's an algae, and that actually produces the energy for the coral. And when it gets warm or cold, they bleach when they're cold as well, it expels that coral, that algae, and it turns white, and that's what's called bleaching. And if the coral doesn't bring back that algae relatively quickly within a few weeks or months, then it can die essentially from lack of energy.
But they talk about the oceans warming.
Yeah.
Fact is that we actually have the same coral as what they have in Indonesia, and the waters up there are 29 degrees. And if you look at the the Great Barrier Reef, it varies from, correct me if I'm wrong, from 27 degrees down to 25 degrees the further south it goes.
That's right. I mean, the coral that's up in Indonesia and Papua New Guinea is 1 or 2 degrees hotter. It's the same species of coral. And in fact, the amazing thing about it is it tends to grow much faster, which is actually fairly obvious because everybody knows that corals are a tropical species. So the further south you go on the Great Barrier Reef, the slower they grow. And you know, the temperatures have increased in the last 100 years, but it's only by half a degree, maybe 3/4 of a degree. The idea that very tiny increase in temperature is suddenly going to make all these corals from the north to the south suddenly bleach and die is ridiculous. The fact is that bleaching, like bushfires, like droughts, is one of these extreme events that periodically occurs on the reef, and the coral dies. Some of it dies. Most of it doesn't, by the way. Most of the bleached coral does not die. And it then recovers within a few years or a decade. And this has been going on since time immemorial.
Now, the reef is about 2,500 kilometres long.
A bit less, yeah, about that. Yep.
About that. So how much of the reef would you say is in a bad state through bleaching or the problems that we have?
I would say much less than 1% is in any stress at all. Right? You might be able to make a case that a couple of the very small reefs right at the mouth of some rivers might have a little bit of stress, but the other 99% of the reef is actually in excellent shape, even though it may be wiped out by a bleaching event or a cyclone. If we have a cyclone, we could lose a third of the coral on the Great Barrier Reef overnight, right? But that doesn't mean to say the reef is damaged. This has just happened. This is just it's part of being in Australia. It comes and it goes, and it recovers incredibly rapidly.
Peter, can I share with people at home just a couple of photographs I took on the weekend? I fired the plane up and I went for a fly over the Keppels, which is in central Queensland, and just have a look at some of these shots. This is Northwest Island. Have you been there?
I've never been there. I know of it, but I've never actually been there.
This is absolutely one of the most stunning regions of the Capricorn Coast, and you can see quite clearly the reef around it is just spectacular. This was another shot that I took, but off Great Keppel Island. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't realise, but this is Monkey Reef. A couple of years ago was wiped out by a bleaching occurrence, and we are probably about 4 to 6 years on, and the reef itself has recovered just beautifully.
Yeah. You know, 5 to 10 years is all it takes. You know, those reefs are also sometimes killed by the freshwater plume coming out of the massive Fitzroy River. They often claim it's the sediment that kills the corals periodically, but actually it's the freshwater that's really damaging. But they'll be back within 5 years. This has been going on since forever. But, you know, in 2010 or 11, there was a massive cyclone called Tropical Cyclone Hamish. It wiped out almost all the coral from, well, the bottom third of the reef, the southern third of the reef. Within 5 years, there was a 250% increase in the amount of coral. So whereas you always hear about this massive reduction after a bleaching event, you never hear about these incredible recoveries that have been going on, which have been documented in science for literally decades. We've known about this for a long time.
Yeah.
Peter, coral bleaching has been first discovered, again, correct me if I'm wrong, about the 1930s, but it was only reported about the 1960s, 1970s. Is that correct?
Well, it was discovered, it was first observed in 1929 or whatever, and it's been periodically noted, but the scientists claim that the mass coral bleaching didn't occur until the late 70s or early 80s, and this actually is just rubbish. If there had been a massive bleaching event in 1929, would anybody have known about it? Would anybody have cared about it? We didn't have satellites to measure the ocean temperature. We didn't have helicopters to go and do these surveys. So bleaching events would have been happening in the past. It's just that there weren't scientists there to do it. In the 1960s, there was probably only a dozen marine biologists on the whole Great Barrier Reef. There's now, you know, literally thousands of people.
Is that because it's become more lucrative? The government are funding more of these people to go and be scientists? Because let's face it, Peter, if you're a scientist today, we've got scientists out there that believe the planet's only 6,000 years old.
Well, not many would believe that.
Oh, I know that,
yeah.
but that's a religious belief, obviously.
Yes, yeah.
But they are still classed as scientists, and it makes it very difficult for them to explain how dinosaurs exist.
Yeah.
if then they're believing that the planet's only 6,000 years old. So how is it that we can discredit those scientists, but we can't discredit those that share a difference of opinion, like, well, you've been discredited by your own university that you worked for, but how is it that you can be discredited but they can't as religious scientists?
Well, it's a fair point, and what this comes back to is that we really have got massive quality assurance with science in general, and if you want to talk about it, this isn't just in the environmental sciences, but in fact, even in the medical sciences, they're finding that the so-called peer-reviewed literature, when checks are done, about half of it turns out to be wrong when it's finally checked. So, and they call this a replication crisis. It's well known. You know, the Australian Academy of Sciences is talking about this. So we have major problems right across the sciences with making sure things are right.
And that's where you were talking to me earlier about this Timothy Clark. Is Timothy Clark?
Yes, yeah.
I think that's very interesting. You need to explain to people about that.
Yeah. Well, Timothy Clark, so essentially the basis of science is that if you have a result, another scientist should be able to come along, do pretty well exactly the same thing, get the same results, right?
Yeah.
So this is how we know Newton's laws of motion, they just work, all right? This is how we know that antibiotics, they just work. Well, Timothy Clark looked at some work on essentially climate change, on the behaviour of little fish. Supposedly these fish in high carbon dioxide atmospheres would lose their sense of smell, and instead of swimming away from predators, they'd actually swim towards them and get themselves eaten, right? So Timothy Clark did these experiments again and found out of eight studies, all of them were wrong. So this came out of the James Cook University Coral Reef Centre. Now, Timothy Clark is not a climate skeptic like me. I'm a slight skeptic, but Timothy Clark is a complete believer. He believes that climate change is affecting, you know, the world, and it's not going to be good. But nevertheless, he did the experiments and he found no, this work was wrong, and he reported it in a completely honest way, and he needs a great deal of credit for doing that because it went against his beliefs in some regards.
Do you believe that there needs to be an independent body set up that has a scientist so everything can have really accurate peer review and facts put forward so we know exactly, not from these scientists that have got jobs, that are looking after themselves, that we need to have a full investigation into this?
Yes, we've got to make science reliable. So we've got this thing called peer review, which your listeners may have heard of, but actually most scientific results, scientific reports, the way it's checked is that piece of that report is given to a couple of other scientists, and they just have not much more than a quick read of it, and they say whether it's right or wrong. Most people think peer review is when that work goes to maybe a dozen scientists and they redo all the experiments and really do it thoroughly, right? But that's not what happens. So most of the science about the Great Barrier Reef is not properly checked. And what I think needs to be happening is we need to have super duper peer review, and it's basically a government-funded Office of Science Quality Assurance that if, say, farmers are being claimed they're killing the reef from pesticides, and here's a piece of work that proves that piece of work now needs to go to this audit office that really checks it properly to make sure it's right. I've checked, quite a bit of the science on the Great Barrier Reef and spent a great deal of time on it, and again and again and again we're finding some of these results are just completely wrong.
I want to put the climate science on hold for a minute and run through a couple of other issues. If you want to talk to Peter tonight, well, we'll do that in a sec. 1300 857 466. If you want to talk to Pauline or Peter Ridd about the Great Barrier Reef or any other issue that you have tonight, that's the number 1300 857 466. This is live. There's only about a 16-second delay. So anyway, if you want to talk to Pauline tonight or Peter, that's the number, 1300 857 466. I want to bring to your attention, we've all seen over the last 24 hours, Holden have announced an exit from Australia and New Zealand. This is not just the Oz exit, but the New Zealand exit as well. 800 jobs ultimately will go over the next 12 months. They say dealers have been in meetings today, which will announce some major discounts on whatever stock is left in Australia. But 600 jobs will literally go immediately. The other 200 that remain will be used to honour the 10-year warranty service period that Holden have said that they will adhere to. But in the meantime, Pauline, we've lost another industry.
And the big lineup of how many industries have we lost?
I can go
What-
through them. I
Well,
honestly can.
Well, I think people would be interested in that,
Well-
and how many industries.
You know, I know we talk about 600 jobs with Holden, but the reality is, in the last 12 to 24 months, we've lost Shoes of Prey. Bose have said they're closing 119 stores globally. That's 19 here in Australia. Ed Harry are gone, the men's clothing store. Napoleon Purtis. Dimmies announced the other week that they're gone. Topshop, Gap, Esprit. That was 67 stores alone in Australia and New Zealand. Toys R Us went. Roger David. Holden, of course, which was announced yesterday. Kmart stores have announced they're closing some. Big W have announced they're going to close some stores. Harris Scarf, I know that the stores there have just gone out of business. EB Games are closing 19 stores. Bardot have closed 58. Australian Geographic, that's been rebranded recently, which would have cost a fortune to Curious Planet. They've closed 63 stores. Jeans West are now in administration. There's 988 jobs. And Pumpkin Patch has
What
gone.
about Country Road? Didn't they?
Yeah, Country Road's another
Are they?
one. There you go.
Another one that's going. About 5 years ago, it was brought to my attention about how they could prop up the Holden car industry.
Yeah.
And at that time, they were saying since the year 2000, we're putting in about $500 million a year, the government funding, to prop up Holden. Now, what should have done, and this is what I came out with, instead of giving the company the $500 million, they should have actually been giving a rebate to any Australian that bought a Holden car and giving them a $5,000 cheque or a $7,000 cheque rebate straight away. So instead of going through the company, they actually gave it to the consumer that
But
bought the
why-
car.
but
why
why?
are these... No, sorry.
I
I'm
wanna
going
know.
to get this
Yeah,
out,
go.
all right? What about the government departments? Why aren't they driving Holden cars?
I know.
Why are they actually buying all these other cars from overseas? And this is where your free trade agreements, your tariffs, and bringing all these cars from overseas. That's our blasted problem. We've destroyed our industries and manufacturing here. And I have been saying it for the last 24 years. We've lost our footwear and clothing, even the steel manufacturing, everything that we've gone, wood chip, value adding. And you know this car industry? Years ago, they said the value added to the car industry was a $49 billion industry. So all these added-on industries who rely on their Holden, they're going to go. Although a lot of them would have gone now over the years. So this is the stupidity of the governments that we've had.
Well, Ford has said they're in it for the long haul. Let's see what happens there. But Holden made it very clear, no more right-hand cars, and that instantly puts them out. So the Maloo, the Commodore, the government just recently have signed a deal with BMW and Toyota, and that is to replace the fleet of Commonwealth vehicles. Now, again, I know that they were looking for quite a lengthy period of time. I don't know what the process was. I know it had to go to tender because it was beyond a certain amount, and because of the free trade agreements that have been done, as soon as something reaches a certain figure, you've got to open it up to those free trade partners.
Well, yes. You know, I had my Holden Statesman for 11 years, and I just got rid of it a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I did 356,000 Ks in it. What a great car. So,
Well, I have to admit, I'm part of the problem. I've never owned a Holden.
it's your fault.
Well,
Your fault.
we can all take some level
Have you
of
got a Holden,
responsibility,
Peter?
but
No.
Your fault too.
I think it's important to realise though that the tariffs really came off, and I've got an image here that might be of interest, because if we actually have a look at the tariffs that were removed, you can see quite clearly here. 1987, we had passenger vehicles that were brought in from overseas had a 57.5% tariff. And then slowly over time, they were reduced by 2.5% from 1987 up until 2000, where it went down to 15%. And then the current import duty is down to 5% today. So clearly, when you're producing cheaper cars in overseas countries and you're trying to compete with the high wages, which we've had high wages here in Australia for a very long time, compared to other countries where some of these vehicles are made, it makes it bloody tough.
What's going to happen with the luxury car tax?
Oh,
Why
won't
keep
go.
it on?
33%.
Why keep it on?
I agree.
Right.
Yep.
Right, not happy, not happy. Not happy, Jen.
1300 857 466. Maybe you've got your view on that. That's our telephone number. We do have a couple of people lined up ready to go. Let's go to the orange line now. He's from Perth in Western Australia. It's Craig. G'day, Craig. Have we got Craig there, or is he hung up?
Yep.
Oh, g'day.
Hi,
Craig.
Craig. Hello.
Hey, Pauline, it's Craig. How are you?
Hello, Craig. Yes.
What do you
would
want
you
to
like
talk
to talk about?
Yeah, Reclaim Australia, Craig. You know, who always represents and the patriot from Western Australia.
I know you're very patriotic.
Yep, no, that's it. Hey, look, you know, because Australia is the best country in the world anyway, but I'll wrap it up. I'll keep it quick. But no, look, it's just disturbing to see Australia is a hard-working, we always very conscious with our pollution. We try and recycles. We get very high, council rates to cover this. And it just seems very strange for, us to jump through hoops and pay extraordinary amounts of energy in costs, for this government. And it just seems like we're going the total wrong way. We've just lost Ford and Holden. We're basically becoming an export, country, and it's basically just raw mineral, with our iron ore, gas, some of the best seafood and meat in the world. And we buy back, like as Pauline said this morning, quite inferior products. And I think it's about time, if someone gets a backbone in this country, because it seems like we're losing our farming. They're just getting left out to dry. Meanwhile, we're sending billions offshore in foreign aid. Our diggers have got problems as well. It just seems like we're spending the wrong money everywhere. But it seems,
Craig, you're
like a
just
global problem.
you're just espousing what a lot of Australians feel about it, and these concerns that they have, and it's what I keep taking to the floor of Parliament, and hopefully to get more people elected to the floor of Parliament to represent our concerns.
Seems like it's worldwide. In a lot of Western countries, I see, like my home country is England, they're getting, replaced in their own streets and being called a racist at the same time. We're speaking out about it. And, you don't have to be white and to be English, you know what I mean? It's just...
You don't have to be white, be Australian, and that's what I say, which is very important. We're all Australians together.
The harmonic balance of that culture, you have to maintain the race, because I believe that culture comes from race. As we've seen that the race is being replaced, knife crime shooting through the roof. We're seeing terrorism on our streets. The IRA and that kind of thing. We've never seen this kind of thing before, and it just really kills me to see that we send our men to war to fight for this great country, and it seems like we're just getting left and we're getting seconds and no one's really listening to us.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for the call. 1300 857 466. That's a simple number to remember. We'll go straight to our blue line now. This is Glenn. He's in Springfields. G'day, Glenn. How are you?
Yeah, g'day, mate. G'day, guys. How you going?
Hello, Glenn. Good.
Now, you got a question for Peter Ridd?
Yeah, I just have a general question regarding sort of the family law situation. I represent a group of 5,000 Australian adults in Australia that have suffered from parental alienation, and a lot of us in the community and people that have been affected by it sort of noticed that on Friday in the Senate inquiry that the Australian Human Rights Commissioner representing the children sort of said that PA doesn't really exist and being a little bit debunked. And I thought I could pose a bit of a general question to the three of you to help plenty of people that are suffering and in distress around it, because a lot of people have reacted quite poorly online behind the scenes. And one of the things that we noticed is that Richard Gardner is the a psychiatrist that's passed away, coined the term parental alienation syndrome, which wasn't accepted by the American Psychiatric Association. And they produced like the Bible of mental health called the DSM-5. And it's not in there. And it's not in there because it's referred to as child psychological abuse and some other bits and pieces. I suppose I wanted to pose a bit of a question on it that I've heard today that a lot of people that are self-representing in the family court are really struggling trying to get legal aid. And I heard that Queensland legal aid, as of over the last 6 months, are automatically rejecting initial applications for legal aid and hoping people go away. And it's not until they actually go through the appeals process that the review officer is actually then granting automatically without any changes to the original application.
That's the first
suppose
time I've
I
heard
wanted
about that, Craig, about legal aid. First time I've heard that they've been denied it and through the appeals process they're getting it. I know legal aid is terribly underfunded by the federal government. They need an injection of about possibly $300 million into it to give those people the opportunity to legal representation in the courts, and that's why a lot of them are let down because they don't have that legal representation. The parental alienation, I did ask the Commissioner from the Human Rights, and she actually denied it was an issue. She didn't believe it is. I disagree with her. I think it is an issue, and don't worry, we will be following that up.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. 1300 857 466. If we can just get an update, we'll go here. Family Law Inquiry, the public hearings continue. March 10 will be in Townsville, so that's just over a week's time. March 11 in Rockhampton, March 12 Brisbane, 13th of March in Sydney, and then we travel down to Tasmania for the April 6 and April 7 hearings in Launceston and Hobart, followed by Victoria on April 8 and April 9 in Melbourne and Western Australia, and also Northern Territory are yet to be announced. So,
you know, I just want to ask Peter one question here. I think it's very important. It keeps getting raised all the time on the floor of Parliament by the Greens, that they say that coal is destroying the reefs.
Oh, this one where supposedly coal dust is affecting the reef. Yeah, no, it's...
But the Adani mine is basically, 350 k's from the coast. Then you've got another 50 k's out to the reef.
Well,
so,
at least that, actually. Yeah. Yes, I mean, there was this terrible paper that came out, a scientific report, saying that the coal dust had spread everywhere, and it turns out that the scientists have made a dreadful error in their calculations, and some CSIRO scientists corrected this, and they were out by between 1,000 and 3,000% in their calculations. So, you know, it's another example of very, very shoddy science.
1300 857 466. I've got Ben who is in Frankston. Hello, Ben.
How you going there? How you going, Pauline?
hello, Ben. Good.
Got to say, love your work in every department. You just bring it to them and keep on going. Now, I was reading Malcolm Roberts' emissions post today, where he stated, "I hope you're ready to fight with me." Now, I've got to say, yes, we are. I run a group with over 2,000 people and have the stretch possibly up to 50 to 100,000 people in Australia that are ready to fight this criminal government. And that's in the street if we have to. We don't want to, but let's say it. We got to do it if we got to do it. But we need to know who we are fighting. ScoMo with his Hillsong scams and his greedy freak, or the blokes who fill their pockets endlessly. But it's not them. We got to fight them first. But it's the UN and it's the SDGs. It's the Club of Rome that we've got to fight. The horrible boogeyman at the top of the list. And I know you're ready to fight. So I'm making the statement. So are we, mate. We are.
And so it's Malcolm Roberts. Look, I got into politics because I was concerned about my country and the future of this country. I think everyone wants to live their life in peace and harmony, and to have a decent standard of living and a way of life. And if these governments, whether it be the coalition government or whether it be the Labor Party, that are not following the best interests of the people, I will speak out against it. If they are, I will support them. And it's about common sense. I think we need to get common sense back into the agenda and believe that, you know, we are a sovereign nation. We should be able to determine our own future. It's not up to the United Nations. Now, for a long time I've been saying that get out of the United Nations. They're telling us how to run our country. We're signed up to a lot of this, the Paris Agreement, which I don't agree with, and of course having Peter Ridd tonight is actually answering a lot of the questions that I think Australians haven't had the opportunity to really listen to truthfully from a scientist's point of view. And regardless of whether you think Peter's right or not, I think that we should have a debate on this. Let's have a Royal Commission into climate change. Let's hear the real evidence before we push forward by either side of politics and pushing their own agenda, which in the end could actually destroy our our jobs, our economic stability of the country, and I think we need to do that. Let's know the truth instead of pushing their own agenda.
Peter, I've got to ask, what influence does the UN have over science, do you feel?
Well, it does on the reef science because we're signed up to, it's a World Heritage Area. Then the reports have to be made to the United Nations every year about the Great Barrier Reef. And of course, governments are very scared by that because the last thing they want to have is the reef downgraded. Though even their own reports will often say that the reef is in poor condition, which is a terrible thing to do. You're telling the whole world that the reef is in poor condition. Nothing could be worse for your tourist industry than telling them that. But yes, it's really through the fact that it's a World Heritage Area that there is influence that comes from the United Nations in that case. It's not a huge influence in that particular case. Most of the crazy legislation that's coming through, in my view, and the bad science is entirely homegrown, unfortunately.
And this is from all sides of politics, really, isn't it?
Yep.
There's not just one side. Those that have been in government for consecutive years obviously are implementing science or policy that was produced and provided by other political parties.
That's right. Though I suspect, in all parties, both the major parties, there are individuals there who have doubts about the quality of some of this science.
Yeah.
The problem is, though, that the science organisations are very powerful. If you say, "Oh, I don't believe that," then you're a denier, and you can get into an awful lot of trouble. And it needs a politician with a high degree of bravery to take those sort of people on.
Yeah, and you've seen this firsthand. Being sacked from a university as a professor, as a lecturer, you've spent decades of your time figuring out what works and what doesn't work on our Great Barrier Reef, and yet a lot of the influence, as you've rightfully said, is coming from the United Nations, from, in often cases, landlocked countries that have got a bit of influence over what we do.
I mean, they don't have a huge amount of influence. It's mostly us making the decision, and it's the problem is that even if a politician really doesn't think that there's much wrong, they can't say that because it's political suicide for them. And that's why it's so important to get the fundamental problem is the science needs to be checked, and we've got to get somehow or other the ability to get this checked. And this is what there's a Senate inquiry that's going on, which Senator Hanson here voted in favour of getting this thing up and running to look at the link between agriculture and the Great Barrier Reef. And I'm hoping that one of the findings that will come out of that is that irrespective of whether you believe that agriculture is killing the reef, and I certainly don't think it is, we certainly need to check a lot of this science.
Can we go to Stefan or Stephen? What is it? Hello? Blue line. Wants to talk to you about, I think it's Stefan. Hi, Stefan.
Hello, people. Hello, Pauline. I'm a great admirer of you and your work and your fortitude in regards to common sense and thinking forward for Australians. We Australians, and I guarantee it's nearly all of us, are really concerned about the way we've been governed and the direction we're heading. Look, where do I start? I'll start, for instance, the submarine deal, which is an absolute joke. Buying 12 submarines for what? For $80 billion, which are already out of date. Perfect targets for the enemy. Secondly, and thinking forward, like the Snowy Mountain Scheme and the water issues over in Tasmania, why don't we think ahead, open up the entire eastern states and waterproof it, drought-proof it?
Yep.
Totally agree with you, Stephen, and especially on the submarines. It was estimated to cost $50 billion. They believe it's going to blow out to about $80 or $90 billion. I've been totally against this, and at the end of last year I went in a submarine for 48 hours, completely underwater the full time, sat on the bottom, this was a diesel electric, which I got to understand far better having been on the subs. I think what we're doing is an absolutely waste of money, and by the time we get the first sub, which will be about the mid-2030s, all right, about that time, the last one is close to 2050, 12 submarines of the diesel electric. Diesel electric cannot stay underwater any more than 3 days. They must surface to get the air to cool the engines. If you have a nuclear sub, they will actually stay underwater indefinitely. They also can travel at a knot of around about 22 knots, whereas the diesel electric only travels around about 8 knots, approximately about that.
Oh, rocket ship.
If we actually have, there are real problems here. If we actually have to, and they're over on the west coast, so if we have problems on the east coast, it's going to take them at least a week to get there. It takes them ages to get up to around the Coral Sea. It's just ridiculous. Not only that, now the French are saying, you don't have the expertise or the people who have the knowledge. We're going to have to send over our workers to teach your workers. So where they were saying, we're going to have jobs in Australia, that is not the case, because they're now saying that we need their workers to do this. I believe that the federal government should actually get rid of this, pay them out, get rid of it. This is also a new sub, the Barracuda, which is untested. Yeah. This is a completely new design, as we did from the French, the Mirages. So that was their aircraft. They actually lined it up with their weapons in it. Then they actually, they didn't sell us a program. They didn't buy it. They said, oh, you never bought the program off us. Well, the French thinks we're absolutely wonderful. Come in, suckers. We'll take your money. And this is going to be exactly the same what's going to happen in the subs. As far as I'm concerned, get rid of it, get out of it. We don't need this. This was an election to keep Christopher Pyne any seat in South Australia, and it's a waste of money. So, and even the Snowy 2 Mountain scheme, that's another thing. You're pumping water uphill. That's actually going to cost us more to pump it up in electricity than what we're going to get out of it. So another waste of billions of dollars, overall about $10 billion from the government. And you know what I want? I want the Bradfield scheme to water inland Australia and New South Wales and hopefully down to Victoria for about $15 billion. I think it'll be money better spent.
No brainer. I know you've argued about the Olympics. We'll come to that very shortly. 1300 857 466. I don't think there's any denying where she sits, Stefan. Let's go to Julie now, she's in New South Wales. I think, Julie, you're not a fan of Sarah Hanson-Young.
Oh my God, Pauline.
You feel sorry for me having to sit in the parliament with her, don't you?
And share a name.
I know. I keep telling them, I said she's no relation of mine. Don't think she's my daughter.
Pauline, my frustration is it seems whatever channel that you watch, whether it's Sky, whether it's Channel 10, Channel 7, every station seems to give Hanson-Young and Adam Brandt a platform to just spew out rubbish, and they never seem to get challenged. And I've watched Parliament and I've watched the Senate, and the things that they say, they're just outrageous. And I just want your thoughts on that, particularly Brandt, actually, because he just is a nutter.
Look, he's in the lower house, so I don't have to put up with him. It's enough putting up with the rest of the Greens, especially Sarah Hanson-Young in the Senate, and especially it was Di Natale. Yep. He was, they're shockers. I don't know how to put him in the list, who's the worst of the lot. But, you know, there was, what's her name who left the Greens? Rhiannon. She was nice, okay? Didn't agree with the politics, but at least she was polite. I think the rest are nutters. I totally agree with you and what they go on about, and hardly ever hear them standing up and fighting for Australia or the Australian people. It's all about overseas and what's happening with all the refugees and everyone else, not the Australian people who voted them in. They don't back it up. And exactly tonight, and it's great having Peter Ridd here tonight, because he's actually answered the questions that I put to him, which the Greens are constantly saying on the floor of Parliament: coal is destroying the reef, or the reef is dying, and bleaching and everything that's happening there, and they can't answer your questions. Malcolm Roberts has actually asked for them to debate him in the last 2 years. They won't debate him. They don't know what they're talking about. And I'll tell you this, Most of the members on the floor of Parliament have no idea, no clue about climate change or about carbon dioxide. Wouldn't have a clue what you're talking about. The only one that really can debate them or has any knowledge or understanding is Malcolm Roberts. He leaves them all for dead.
It's
And they
just
want to
rhetoric.
answer these questions.
Yeah, it's rhetoric. It's absolute rhetoric. And Peter, you put up with rhetoric all the time. Like, you are about to publish a book. It's not far away.
Yeah.
And you were sharing some images with me earlier of just complete false photographs that are used either by the Greens
Yep.
or other environmental groups that say that the reef's dead or it's dying or coal is killing our reef.
Yeah.
I never shared you this story before, but we've got a candidate in the seat of Keppel that's actually, before the federal election, bought a fish tank, put a big lump of coal in it, and that fish is still swimming around with that lump of coal without changing the water.
Yes.
And this is now going on over, a bit over a year now, a year and a half.
Well, coal is basically an inert rock. Sure, if you pulverise it up and breathe it in for a lifetime, it will kill you.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's a very, very inert rock. It's not a poison or anything like that. But yeah, some of the stuff is quite ridiculous. I mean, there's a beautiful photograph by Get Up of a very beautiful reef, and across the photograph it says it's about dredging of ports, which is supposedly killing the reef, coal ports. And it says, should we dump 3 million tonnes of mud on this reef, or some words to that effect? Well, this reef is 70 or 100 kilometres away from the nearest port.
They don't allow it, Peter, do they? They will not
No.
allow dredging to go anywhere near the reef, and that's
No,
why they're very
that's
concerned
right.
about it. So
Exactly.
it's another lie.
Yes, and I've done a lot of working on dredging in the last 25 years. There's literally, over the last 25 years, probably, I don't know, $200 million have been spent in surveys of dredging, and so far it has killed nothing, because we don't dredge anywhere near the reef.
Yeah.
The Great Barrier Reef proper.
1300 857 466. Ryan's done exactly that. He's called us. He's from Budrum tonight. G'day, Ryan.
G'day. How's it going?
Good. Peter's standing by, and so's Pauline, mate, for your question.
Okay, appreciate that, man. Appreciate you guys' work. Just quickly to Peter, I'm just wondering if you're, say, a doctor or a lawyer and you get found for committing malpractice, if you're doing something that's a bit shady, you can, potentially lose your license to operate in that profession. If you're working as a professor at a university or somebody undertakes studies, is there genuine repercussions that somebody in that field can fear for, putting in reports that have got falsified data, or, as you say, with the repeatability crisis, if they're pushing a study that's clearly not repeatable, is there repercussions for them if they get caught?
Very, very few repercussions at all. In fact, I mean, so many scientists, you can prove the stuff is wrong and there's not even any reputational damage to it. But yes, compared with, some of this bad science is affecting people's livelihoods and costing literally tens or hundreds of millions of dollars over enough time. If a person did that, they'd take you for everything you were worth. But unfortunately, these science institutions that are bringing out science which we know is not properly checked and tested, there is no comeback on them whatsoever, and that needs to change. There needs to be some consequence for getting it wrong.
Totally agree.
And are you sort of implying that there's a culture within the universities where people don't sort of peek over each other's shoulders, or if somebody is maybe pushing the boundaries, that they wouldn't get reported, or everyone sort of works together for the common goal of just getting the handouts, sort of thing? Or
well, I wouldn't go quite to that point, but there's certainly not enough. When people might be suspicious that other work is wrong, there's not much, people tend not to, call it out the way they should. At James Cook University at the moment, there's a bit of a scandal because I think I mentioned there are these 8 studies that have come out which have been found to be completely wrong. Now, some people must have been suspicious about some of this stuff, but, all this bad work has gone through, and really there's never been any consequence on that.
Thanks for your call, mate. 1300 857 466. You can talk to Peter about anything to do with the Great Barrier Reef and science, of course, or have a chat to the boss. You had an interesting meeting today I wanted to ask you about.
No, I'll finish up this first, okay? This is what I said to Peter before. I found it last week that the IPPC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, right? That one? Under their charter, all they're wanting to do is just look at man-made climate change. There is no variation, right? It's only man-made climate change. So if they really want to know the truth, why not investigate both sides of the argument? Do you agree?
You mean the natural variability and the man-made side of things?
Yeah, it should.
Yes, yeah,
because
it should do that. And I think it's true that they don't look at the natural variations enough. They don't, there was the medieval warm period, this is only, 800 or 900 years ago, when it was probably at least as warm as it is now. You go back a few thousand years ago when the Egyptians were building pyramids, it was probably a degree or two hotter than it is now. There was no change in the carbon dioxide. And it's the same with the reef. They don't look at the natural variations. If something changes, they naturally ascribe it to, whatever humans are doing, rather than contemplating, well, maybe this is just a natural fluctuation that's occurring.
Well, that's exactly right. What about all these volcanic eruptions that we have under the ocean?
Yeah.
Your plates are moving all the time, so it's leaving gases and different things.
Yes.
And another thing that I've been told, more carbon dioxide is emitted through the soil and through the oceans than what humans do.
There is more cycling, there's no doubt about it. The amount that comes up out of the soil and the ocean then goes back in is considerably more. But I still think it's true that the increase in the carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere is ultimately caused by humans.
It has increased, but so has oxygen.
Well, okay.
Oxygen levels, yes, they have. Carbon dioxide has increased, but so has oxygen.
Okay.
So where do we get our oxygen from?
Well, from
Plant
the plants,
life.
yes,
Correct.
that's right.
So if
yeah.
our oxygen levels have increased, so therefore we've got more trees and plants on,
Well,
considering the amount of people that we have.
There's no doubt that, one of the things that carbon dioxide does is it's a fertiliser for plants, and in dry climates like Australia, there has been a greening. There is plants are growing more rapidly, and these semi-desert and desert communities tend to grow better and are greener. There's no doubt about that.
Let's go to another call, 1300 857 466. I know in the last couple of weeks there's been a inquiry held into the government's cash ban. Now, this is where the government want to limit you to a top cash amount you can spend up to in cash, $10,000. But as soon as you hit a purchase of $10,000 or more, it's got to be paid via some electronic payment or cheque, or you can't use cash anymore beyond $10,000. Now, there are serious criminal consequences if you use cash beyond this, and one of which is 2 years jail.
2 years jail or a fine for a company, $25,000. I think a personal fine, $2,500.
No. Personal fine's exactly the same as the company.
$25,000 personal fine if you use $10,000 or more. So what they're doing is forcing you to go through the bank. So if you don't have an account, you want to get a cheque. So they're making more money and getting you to draw on a cheque, which they charge us $6 or $8.
10.
Check.
10.
Wow,
bucks for a cheque.
that's a while since I've done. You use cheques. Hey, listen.
It used to be free once upon a time.
We were the first ones to come out and oppose this. We're actually been talking to the Labor Party, plus also, the coalition knows that we're totally opposed to this. If the money that we spend is legal tender, they have no right to tell us that we cannot spend our cash or to pay a bill more than $10,000 in cash.
Yeah,
I think it's wrong.
Yep.
So we're pushing against it.
Yeah, we are. And I think Labor are slowly but surely coming around. They're finding their feet and they're going, actually.
Only because
this
they're
is not
listening
good.
to us, James, all right?
I know. You've had multiple meetings with many a Labor people and some coalition
They're
members.
trying to wake them up.
1300 857 466. I do have Warwick on the
brain dead.
line. Warwick's from Spring Farm. G'day, Warwick.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Warwick. Yes,
you want to follow up on this very matter, isn't it? The cash ban. How do you feel about it?
Yes. Well, I'm very concerned about it, and I understand that it has reached the Senate, but has been knocked back down to the lower house to over some dates and timeline concerns. But I'd just like to ask Pauline, in terms of the Senate, how educated do you think the senators are on the evils of this bill and whether they will vote for or against it when it comes back?
Look, it hasn't come before the Senate. right? So it's still yet to come before the Senate. I'm having to talk to other senators with regards to it and putting forward my beliefs, my facts, and talking to the people and what the people are telling me. Hopefully Labor will wake up, because I think they were going to support the coalition on this, and telling them this is not good legislation for the people of Australia, and if they bring in at $10,000, I can assure you they will drop it in no time to $5,000, then down to $2,000. So they'll force you to have to use the credit cards or the banking facilities, which the banks will make a lot more money from people, and I do not agree with this. People have a right to use their cash as legal tender. It was put out by the government. It is in our constitution. The government must provide legal tender. It is not up to them to say how much we can spend and how much we've got to use in a bank cheque or other means.
Totally agree. 1300 857 466. If it does come before the Senate, can you guarantee everybody you will not support this in any way, shape or form?
You have my guarantee. I will not support this bill in any way, shape or form.
There you go. That couldn't be any clearer. 1300 857 466. Thank you, Warwick. You've got the choice of talking to Pauline Hanson tonight or Peter Ridd, of course, who is former JCU professor, sacked a number of years ago, but has lived on. He won his case. And mate, I'd have to say that must have been a bloody good feeling when you won.
Well, it was for a little while, but of course the university have appealed, so we're now in the process of preparing legal arguments against their appeal. So what's happening now is that the university, using public funds...
that was my question.
Yeah,
Who's paying for this?
And we're talking...
You, the taxpayer.
Yeah, I mean, they've actually employed reputedly the most expensive Queen's Counsel in Australia to go to...
Protest, right,
yeah.
Protest.
And essentially...
Protest to the government.
Attorney General?
Yep. Well, you can do whatever you wish, but of course we've got to crowdfund. So we've got a very good legal team as well, but I don't have a job.
Where do people go? They want to crowdfund you?
At the moment we've actually closed the crowdfunding because we think we're not sure how much more we need because we haven't seen the university thing. That there's a GoFundMe site for me. If you go GoFundMe Peter Ridd, but it's closed at the moment for donations. At the end of this month we will see the university case, and we think we're probably going to need another 100,000, and we'll open that probably somewhere in the beginning of March.
If you still want to help Peter, I'd suggest I'm quite happy on Peter's behalf through my office if you want to help Peter, and I'll make sure that he gets that assistance.
Well, what I'll do is I'll let you know. We don't know whether we're going to need that. We've already raised altogether something like 700,000. It's ridiculous amounts of money. Right?
Wow.
We think... Well, it cost us $250,000 just to do the first bit.
I wouldn't mind joining our fundraising team for this election, Peter.
Yeah, that's right. So we closed it but now we probably will reopen it in March because, you know, as I say, we're against a very high-powered legal team.
Isn't it disgusting though to get justice in this country? You've got to be a millionaire.
Right. Yes, I mean we've had to put hundreds of thousands of our own money into it as well. You know, so it's cost us a lot. But we've had over 4,000 donations, so there's been a real groundswell. The criminal thing here is that the university, you know, they don't care. The higher officers of the university, it's government money, so effectively the Commonwealth government.
This is an appeal. They should not be funded by the taxpayer on the appeal.
Well, I don't think so, because essentially to me it's the judge came down entirely on our side. He said everything the university did was wrong. I had academic freedom. I had the right to say what I said.
Yeah.
And the university had no... So the university basically said, oh, you didn't really say it in a nice way. Essentially was paraphrasing.
They say that about me all the time.
Yeah. And, well, the trouble is, how do you say to an organisation, your quality assurance systems are just not adequate? How do you say that to them without them getting upset? They're going to get upset. There's no way you can say that without them getting worried about it. And essentially the university is arguing they have a right to tell an academic with 35 years experience on the reef, you have no right to express that opinion, even though it was absolutely within my field of expertise.
Yeah. I tell you what, that just shocks me that the money that you've got to spend, not only you've been found, you won your case. This is sour grapes.
Well, it is.
And it's saving face.
Well,
It's their attempt to save face as a university. I'm sure this must have hurt them significantly to have lost.
well, the reputation of the university has been really badly damaged by it, especially in
Yeah.
North Queensland,
Yeah, of
because there's
course.
a lot of farming communities up there, and I'm going into bat for the farming communities and saying, look, farmers are not killing the reef, at least certainly not in my opinion. And here we have the North Queensland's only major university is shutting that person up, and saying, farmers, suck it up, guys, because we're not going to allow anybody to defend you. It's a disgrace.
But James, that's also now when the federal police did a raid on the ABC offices, the ABC
Yeah.
have taken them to court, and now they've lost. Who's paying for that? The taxpayer.
Yeah.
Both of them. They're both government departments, so the taxpayer's paying for this. It shouldn't be allowed.
Well, I have to say the taxpayer has funded cases against each one of us on this panel here. You, Peter Ridd,
Yep.
and
I
myself.
was found not guilty.
Yeah, well, unfortunately,
Political?
I just had to cop it and drop the
Political.
case. But, Peter, you've obviously got very strong support, and I wish you all the best of luck
Yeah,
with that
thanks,
appeal.
yeah.
Because it's not pleasant.
Yep. So the case will be heard in May, and we'll see then whether we win or lose. But in fact, even if we lose, we still win, because it just means the universities have managed to have a contract that means that they can crush freedom of speech at a university. That's all they'll prove if they win.
Well, the more I see it, YouTube is looking better and better and better as an educator than half of our universities, because more and more people are learning stuff on YouTube than they ever will at a university. It's a hell of a lot cheaper.
You're quite right. The standard of education at universities have gone right down, and certainly you're not allowed to speak. There's still no doubt that if you do engineering at James Cook University, my university, you'll still get a really good education in engineering or physics and maths and in the medicine. But so much of the rest of it has gone downhill in a major way.
1300 857 466. I've got Kevin, who's coming to us from Perth. How is it over in Perth? Have you still got sunshine over there at this time, Kevin?
Oh, mate, it's beautiful over here. It's lovely weather in Perth.
Rub
Trust
it
me.
in.
Just waiting for the sun to go down over the horizon, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, it's just starting to go down now.
Beautiful. What would you like to
Pauline,
talk about?
congratulations. I love your One Nation. Fantastic. It's all about Australia. It's brilliant. I love it.
Thank you, Kevin.
You-
What would you like to talk
Yeah,
about?
you're doing really well. I was just a query about this so-called, I know climate change. Everybody hates that word. I don't like it either. But with the coral reef, they're all saying the water's warming up and that's why it's dying. Well, have they ever thought about the floods that tropical Queensland gets and how many chemicals float into that ocean at that time?
Well, I'll put you on to the expert, and you said it's dying.
Well,
Peter said-
it's not dying, and actually the chemicals from farming and the rest of it, actually they have almost no effect. So if you actually look at the concentrations of the various pesticides on the reef itself, they are usually in such small quantities that they are virtually undetectable, even with the most sensitive scientific equipment. One or two of the...
Okay, so...
It's true that there's a couple of little islands. There's an island out the front of Mackay, out of the front of the Pioneer River, called Round Top Island, where they do periodically get, low concentrations, but, slightly worrying levels. But we're talking about a tiny little reef, long way from the Great Barrier Reef. So no, they don't. It really doesn't have much effect. In fact, I always say the Great Barrier Reef, in my view, is one of the best protected and most pristine ecosystems in the whole world, full stop. It really is in fantastic shape.
Peter, can you just explain to people what is the Great Barrier Reef and how far does it actually sit off the coast? Because there's this ill-conceived idea that it's the Great Barrier Reef is as soon as you step off the sand.
Yeah. Well, you're dead right, and most people don't understand. In fact, most of the reef is 100 kilometres offshore. It's a very, very long way offshore. And so...
It goes a fair way up too.
It's 2,000 kilometres long, so it goes right from north of Cape York Peninsula right down to, not far north of Brisbane, actually, really, in the scheme of things. But it's a long way away, and although stuff gets washed out in the rivers, generally speaking, it doesn't get out to the reef itself. The scientific organisations are very sneaky, though. They talk about the inshore Great Barrier Reef, and these are these tiny little reefs very close to the coast on little islands and off the beach. But at most, that's 1% of the reef. And those are the only ones that have any effect whatsoever ever from farm chemicals or sediment. And our work has shown that even those are essentially unaffected. But even if they were, it would only be 1% of the reef.
Is it fair to say, if I was to go and buy some coral from a pet shop, and I put it in a bucket of fresh water, what's going to happen to that?
Kill it stone dead. There's nothing that kills coral better than fresh water.
So what you're saying is some of these cyclonic conditions or weather events that bring mass amounts of water, particularly in the tropics and up in the northern regions where the monsoons happen year on, year out, mass amounts of water that flow out of those rivers have the potential of killing reefs. Is that right?
Well, the fresh water will certainly do it. And you were mentioning the Keppel Islands, right? And that's not far north of the Fitzroy River, which is a big river. And the fresh water from the Fitzroy has killed corals and seagrasses, in the last 20 or 30 years. So that will happen. But the sediment inside that river plume probably has killed almost nothing in that time.
Right, okay. 1300 857 466. I've got to say thanks to Kevin from WA for his call. I know Peter wants to go back to the subject of this cash ban. We'll bring Peter up. G'day, Peter. Where are you from, mate? Norwood. Are you in Tassie? I think he's still there. He's shaking around.
Mate.
G'day. How are you, Peter? You want to talk cash ban?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Hi, Peter. Yes.
Good evening, Pauline. So the cash ban, obviously it's a absolute rort on our civil rights. But there's a bit more to it, I reckon. It's once the interest rates become zero and we go to negative interest rate, that's why they want to take the cash off us.
You're talking about bail-ins.
Well, it's the money that's in the bank. So the bank will charge you interest on your money for keeping it in the bank, and that is happening in other countries around the world. That's another way of looking at it too. You're right. Yes, you're right. I don't trust them where they've got us headed, and that's why I speak out now and have your say, and that's why I want Australians to actually ring up their members of parliament and tell them you're not happy with it and not to vote for it.
Mm. All right. Thanks for the call, Peter.
We've got some other things there on family law, haven't we?
Yeah, we will. We'll get to them shortly, as soon as they're through the system. 1300 857 466. You may have heard in the news over the last couple of days there was a firefighter, a volunteer firefighter, who's been sacked after comments that he made during the bushfires that occurred down south. And I think I've got a recording here.
There's only one person that cares about this country, and that's Pauline Hanson. Come and see us in Nelligan, Pauline. Mate, you're unreal. You care about the country. The rest of them don't. There's only one person that cares about.
That's Paul Parker. Paul Parker lost his job, and I couldn't believe. Did you see that footage of he was? A lot of people thought he was a Labor voter and having a go at Scott Morrison because he was a Labor voter, but in actual fact, he's a Pauline voter, One Nation voter.
You know what? I was watching the Bolt Report last night, and I was having my dinner. And when he came out and said, "No, go, Pauline," I nearly fell off my chair and choked on my dinner. I could not believe it. I was half expecting him to say Labor. He was Labor. I really did.
Yeah.
I thought he was Labor. I think everyone was absolutely gobsmacked and couldn't believe that he said he supports me.
Well, Paul
Thank you,
Parker
Paul.
is a rural volunteer firefighter, and I hope he is back in that fire engine before we know it.
Did he actually get sacked?
Well, that's what's been said. Look,
well, I hope not.
Well, he doesn't certainly pull on the boots and the overalls to go and fight fires anymore. So you tell me.
Well, I don't know, but we've got to follow this up.
Yeah, we do.
We can't allow it to happen.
So anyway,
We'll look after Paul.
we will follow that up, Paul. John Coates you met with today, and I'm sorry I couldn't make this. I got caught up. How was this meeting? Now, here's a man. Let me tell you about John Coates. John Coates is the IOC boss. He's the one that's out there fighting for the Olympics bid, the 2032 Brisbane Olympics bid, by which time I just question whether we'll even have men's and women's races anymore, whether it will be this new Olympics where it's just...
That's right, it's 12 years down the track,
It is.
so you've got to decide whether you want to be Martha on that day.
Arthur or Martha.
Yeah, I know, and then there'll be controversy over whether you should be in the women's weightlifting or the male weightlifting, and who knows what else is going to go on. But anyway...
I know, we've been... I believe we're back. I don't know what happened. John Coates has got many powers and many powerful friends there, and Facebook must have killed the stream. But we are back.
I don't know where all this up to. Arthur or Martha?
Well,
which part?
I know we got so
But anyway,
carried away. How did you go with John Coates? Let's just recap
Well,
from the
okay,
beginning.
he hasn't won me over. I'm sorry, he hasn't. And do you think I trust either political parties? As I said to them, this state is in debt for $91 billion. They are relying on coal to prop us up for an income to the state. Now, everyone wants to, so many people want to get rid of coal. So once we get rid of coal, what state are we going to be in 12 years down the track?
I got no idea. But I know that there's a history of overspends in the Olympics. And I want to bring this up here because it's vitally important to actually see firsthand that we are being conned when it comes to holding an Olympics. Since, you can see here, 1996, and I know we're not going back very far here, but I can tell you the last 60 years of Olympics have produced an average cost of $12.5 billion to host them. Now, the Atlanta Summer Olympics, they said it would cost $1.2 billion. It ended up costing $3.6. The Sydney Olympics, they said it would cost $3.2 billion. Instead, it cost $6.9 billion. Again, go to Athens. That was another Summer Olympics. We're talking about a Summer Olympics. I'm forgetting about the winter ones. Yes, you can see that. $3 billion they said it would cost. It blew out to 16. And then Beijing, have a look at it, for 2008. $20 billion cost. It blew out to $45 billion. And so it goes. And this Olympics that we're talking about, which is the next one, which is coming up, there is a massive blowout again for Tokyo.
That's what I told him, these figures, and he didn't want to acknowledge that whatsoever.
Look at Rio.
Didn't.
They couldn't even afford to pay their police officers, and yet they're hosting a $20 billion. These are US figures, by the way, $20 billion Olympics.
He said they will make money out of the sales of the tickets, which they are hoping to make about $900 million. I said, your security is going to cost between $1 and $2 billion security alone. And I said, what's your biggest stadium? And I said, what about the Suncorp Stadium? And I said, it holds about 52,000 people. And he said, we can't use that for athletics. It has to be a round stadium. So he said to me, well, we'll have to build a stadium, a circular one, with pop-up, for seating.
Oh, wonderful.
Around it. So they have no idea where that is going to go. So then they'll utilise other stadiums and on the Gold Coast. And then he spoke about, I said, how on earth are you going to get the M1? In 12 years' time, he said, the government's going to put money into it and the rail line. And I said, I've heard about this rail line between Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast for years. Nothing's going to happen. And he said, but the coalition, Matisse Cormann, said it will happen. I said, yes. And I said, they may not be government. He said, Albanese, he said he's actually given us support too. And I said, if he's still the Labor leader before the next election.
This is the issue. You've got Labor and Liberal both in bed with each other over this Olympics. Scott Morrison's given $10 million already, and that's for the bid. Now, here's a bloke. His 4-year salary, John Coates, he's on $2.693 million for 4 years. I wish I could get a sales job with that much money. That's what it is. He's a salesman.
It is right.
He's flogging you a dead dog.
So anyway, as I said to him, I'm sorry, I want water security for the state. I want to see the Bradfield scheme so that this will go on for years into the future, give us some economic and water security for Australia. And I said, I don't support a 2-week sugar hit. And of course, then they've got the Paralympics, which is another 2 weeks after that. I just don't think it is viable to hold these Olympics in 2032 when we don't know the state of our economy. If we have another GFC or we have useless governments, that's what we have done, and we're in so much debt in this state. Peter, what's your view? Do you support it?
Look, I'm not a big sports fan. It's probably a little bit outside the sort of thing.
What would you? Okay, let me ask you this: what would you rather? Would you rather we put in a Bradfield scheme which secures Australia, well, more so the East Coast's water supply for the next 100 years, or would you rather a 2-week Olympic event?
Well, I have to confess, the cost does worry me, and I think that there can be things for agriculture that would maybe a better spend of the money.
Oh. Do you know another thing they
that's
said?
outside my scientific expertise.
Do you know what else they said? Obesity. They said this will inspire people to actually get involved in sport. I said, rubbish.
It's
I
sponsored
said
by
you do.
Coke
I
half the
said
time.
you do it. I said you do that in the educational system. I'm very much for sport. I was very much a sports person into everything. I like to try and keep myself fit and healthy now. And you don't need an Olympics to get you motivated. You do it in the schools. You have the sporting that we used to do. We had to do sport. These days, the kids are too interested on their iPhones or iPads in front of the computers without saying, you will get up, you go and do a jog, you will go and get in the pool, you do some laps, you go and play a sport.
This bloke wasn't a former Holden salesperson, was he? No wonder the
Leave
company
Holden alone.
failed.
Don't you
Bloody
dare have a
hell.
go at Holden.
No, but if he was part of it, you can see why it failed. 1300 857 466 if you have any thoughts. Maybe it's Olympics related. If you support
Sinners,
it.
Not happy, John. Not happy, John.
Not happy.
Right,
John.
that's it.
All right, 1300 857 466. I know we're on our soapbox tonight, but maybe you can join us. Maybe you can rant and rave a bit more. Let's go and talk about cars. I believe we've got Adam, who is in Buderim. There's a few people watching up in Buderim tonight. G'day, Adam.
G'day, mate. How are you?
We're good.
Hi, Adam.
G'day, Pauline. Just a couple of questions for you. I'm a return serviceman. I'm having dramas with my kids, getting my kids off my ex. I went to court. I spent in excess of $100,000. We've got a court order. The other week, she refused to give me my boys. They're twin boys, 5 years old.
Yep. Adam, I feel so sorry for you. It's just you're a returned serviceman and it's hard, and I know that returned servicemen have, it's difficult on your marriage with the children, but, we do value the service that you give to Australia, and to come, home and have to face all this, it's extremely hard. So what did the court say? You have access to the children, but she won't hand them over, or what?
Yeah, I've got access. She won't hand them over. So I rang my solicitor. They said, call the QPS, so I rang Queensland Police. They said it's got nothing to do with us. It's a federal matter.
That's right. They won't do anything about it. You've got to go back to the court system. You've got to put in contravention of orders, and then once you put that in, it's got to go back through the system again, and then she'll be dragged through the courts.
Meanwhile, it takes forever.
My question is, after I've spent that much money, is there a class action that we can put against the government because we're forced to go and spend all our money?
No,
and have no
you
result?
can't. No, because the courts are independent of the government, so they actually are. That's why we have the separation of powers, and that's why the courts are totally separate to the government. The government makes the legislation. It is the courts, the judges, and they determine their own determination based on the legislation. So you can't go back. You have to go back through the court system. You have to apply for a contravention of orders, and then you have to go through the system again. That's why she's not allowing you access to the children when it's court ordered. I know it's a hell of an issue. Have you applied for legal aid?
I couldn't get. I tried to get legal aid. I couldn't get it. That's why I spent over $100,000 trying to get my boys. But the thing is, if she randomly lets me have them, I've got my boys here, and then I decide not to give them back to be like a bloody what do you call it, Amber Alert, and the cops around here.
And then it's not going to help you in future if you take it back to courts because you've denied her. If she was given custody of the children and you were giving visiting rights to the children, abide by that. Keep taking back to the courts, go for a contravention order. This is what we're trying to do in the family law inquiry that's just started last Friday. So we want to expose all this that's happening so that we can actually find the answers to address all this. It is not fair on people to spend in excess, you're looking at $100,000. I know people spend a lot more than that. And to have these orders handed down, I want a fairer system for both parties. If you contravene those orders that's brought down by the courts, then you'll pay pay a heavy penalty for it. It's not fair on you. It's not fair on other Australians.
Yeah,
through this
1300
process.
857 466. Adam, if you can, get along to one of the family law inquiry public hearings. The closest one to you will be Brisbane. If you're up in Buderim, that's on the 12th of March. Otherwise, you can see on the screen there, they're in Townsville, Rockhampton on the 10th and 11th. Then in Sydney on the 13th. You'll be back in Sydney, I'm assuming.
So it's Townsville, Rockhampton, Brisbane, then
Yeah.
Sydney.
And then Launceston, Hobart, Bendigo and Melbourne, and Western Australia and the Northern Territory are both yet to be announced.
And that's about June. So we'll be in WA around about the first week of June. So just keep a look.
Look on the website.
those-
It hasn't been
for
locked
those
in just
dates.
yet.
Yeah.
But there is discussion about those dates. So 1300 857 466. You can give us a call. Cheryl is in the upper top of Manhurst. Are you there, Cheryl?
Yes, I am, yes.
G'day. Nice to talk to you.
Where's Manhurst?
New South Wales.
It's Copmanhurst. We're west of Grafton,
Oh, okay.
northern New South Wales.
Yes. What would you like to talk about,
Yeah.
Cheryl?
Look, I'd just like to find out whether, in fact, Australia does have a situation where we can impose a citizen-initiated referendum. My concern is that what the government's doing now is, I'm worried about whether we can actually make it to 2022 and still have a vote.
Yeah, Citizens Initiated Referenda is one of my policies that I've had for the last 23 years. What it is that you can go out and get a petition from people around the country, and if you get a certain number in that petition, it's presented to the Parliament. The Parliament then must enact that before the next election. If they don't enact that, then they must take it to referendum at the next election for the people to vote on. This is actually works in other countries around the world. I think New Zealand has a similar thing to Citizens Initiated Referenda. I think it's also Switzerland and also California. It's giving a voice back to the people so they can have a say. And I fully support it. Like I said, it's one of my policies.
Okay, all right. Well, I suppose my question is that, doesn't One Nation see our current situation as being urgent enough to try and get this off the ground?
Look, it is one of the policies, but you can't get it off the ground unless you actually have the members of Parliament in Parliament. And the other political parties are reluctant to actually bring it in. They don't want it. They want to actually control the people. They have their own agenda and their own policies. I believe the people should have true democracy and having a say in the legislation in this country. So if governments bring in a policy that the majority of people don't want, then they have governments are bound to actually overturn it, or they must send it to referendum for all Australians to have a vote on it. But I'm sorry, that's too much democracy for they want to put in the hands of the people. I believe the people should have more of a say.
If you want to have a chat with Peter or Pauline tonight, Peter Ridd, former JCU lecturer and professor, 1300 857 466. His expertise is in coral reefs and climate science. So very easy. Just pick the number up, 1300 857 466. And just as a gift, doesn't matter whether you make it to air or not, we're going to send you the One Nation keyring, which is out now. You can otherwise buy them on the website, onenation.org.au. There's a whole lot of other things, including the limited edition hand-signed. This one's yet to be signed. We get Pauline to sign her back, where there's normally knives in it. But we must make a new edition, and we'll have knives sticking out the back. What do you reckon? It'll be the special Labor Liberal edition. If you would like it, that's it there. We would normally sign them on the back, 1300 857 466. You can give us a call, but otherwise you will get the keyring tonight. There it is. You can do that now. Okay, let's go to the blue line. I believe I've got Robert. G'day, Robert.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Yeah, we're good.
Hello, Robert.
Good. Hey, okay. So over the past couple of weeks, we've seen the Morrison government being tangled up in the recent sports rorts scandals and poor barreling certain electorates. And we've seen Bridget McKenzie being sacked from her position on the front bench because of it. Pauline, in the past, you voted for a mixture of for and against a federal ICAC was actual key. Given the recent government's transgressions and corruption, Are you going to support a federal IPAC that's actually going to do something and has some teeth to bring this government into account?
Totally agree with the National ICAC. There has been different proposals that have been put forward on how it should be run, and it's got to be run properly. I don't want to see it, a corrupt organisation that's not been upfront with the people. Yes, we should. We have it in other states, and I think we should have a National ICAC, most definitely.
Yeah, it's just coming down to the... some of the parties just want over-the-top rules, and that's the hardest part, Robert. You've got to find an agreement between all parties, and I think once they can sit down, nut that out, it will happen. But I agree that sports rorts, it should be looked into thoroughly. You agree?
Yep.
Okay. So what sort of over-the-top rules have sort of held you guys from setting something up like that in the past?
Well, there has been Rex Patrick. He's from Central Alliance. He's put up some variations to it. So has the Greens put up some variations to it. It's just getting a balance that everyone agrees with it to actually get it passed, because you're going to have the Labor, the Greens and the crossbench to actually agree with this to get it passed. The government is reluctant to see it happen, although they keep saying, and they said that 2 years, they said it 2 years ago, that they will get it up. This just came up the vote in the floor of Parliament last week about the federal ICAC, which got passed actually.
Yeah,
so we did support that in the Senate for it to come up, and I did support that. But the government has been reluctant. They keep saying they're going to get it up, but they're reluctant to actually put forward a model for it and how it's going to work.
Robert, the other thing that people need to understand is while you may get a majority in the Senate, which is a make-up of crossbench,
you need the House of Reps as
you've
well.
got to get the House of Reps across the line. And unfortunately, the government at this point, well, in some cases it's fortunate, in other ways it's unfortunate. They've got the numbers in this case, and they will not support it. So that's where it sits at the moment. But thanks for your call, eh?
No worries. Thanks, mate.
1300 857 466 if you want to give us a call tonight. Wayne Johnson's in Victoria. I know he wants to have a chat about the 1901 Constitution. G'day, Wayne.
Yeah, good day. How you going? Good evening, Pauline. Peter,
Hello, Wayne.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you got enough people elected to the lower house whether One Nation would reinstate the original Constitution of 1901.
There's been a lot of talk about this, and I know a lot of Australians are concerned about it, that it's been sold to America and we don't own it anymore. I'm yet to follow that up and really investigate that. I believe that the way the Parliament's working at the moment, it is working on the Australian Constitution that we have, and the laws that are put forward is brought in by the people that have been elected to the Parliament to vote on that laws and legislation.
Well, I think all you have to do is ask Malcolm Roberts whether the Constitution works. He was kicked out under Section 44, and it's very clear that the 1901 Constitution clearly stated that, and he paid the consequence
all
for it.
our laws are still based on the 1901 Constitution that we have.
Yeah. Anyhow, 1300 857 466. Peter, where to for you these days? Are you ever able to work again in the universities lecturing?
Well, look, no university, I think, is going to want to employ a person who's been fired by another university. Even though I've been exonerated by the courts, I'm still trying to get through to the end of that court procedure. So, no, I think that things are fairly limited. But I'm still working. Mostly, I'm writing a book. I'm still working on things about the Great Barrier Reef, but mostly just trying to get the science quality assurance up and running again. So.
Yeah, I don't blame you. 1300 857 466. Colin has a question on truth or science. Truth about climate, should I say. I've got troubles reading tonight. G'day. Go ahead there, Colin. Don't you laugh.
Oh, well, I will chuckle a little bit. It's wonderful, it was wonderful listening to you, all three of you tonight, and hello, Senator Hanson. In regard to the climate change argument, well, unfortunately, I don't think anyone's going to win that, because you've got the crackpots on one side, and then you've got people like yourself, Pauline, that think quite logically about it, and think But I just think that for One Nation to sort of win some of these people over, it's actually about chucking it up to some sort of undeniable truth that, okay, we all want to live
in a healthy environment, and we all want to do better for the world and all those sort of things. So it's about sort of putting the arguments forward that not even the Greens could disagree with. You know, we want to see more trees planted. We want more water being available for all Australians, and actually start winning the people over that way. Because I think anyone that puts the argument forward, whether you believe in man-made climate change, or whether you don't believe in it, you're going to get massive division with that. So it's about actually, so for me, I think, and I've won a few arguments this way, saying, all right, well, put your views aside, put my views aside. What do we both want? You know, what's the argument really about? And I think that's a better approach, rather than having the argument about science. And I know certainly no disrespect to Paul on the end. I just feel that that's a much better approach politically to actually bring to the table.
Colin, I think there has to be truth. It has to be facts that put on the table. If we're going to change our standard of living, way of life, and escalating costs that are happening, people should have an understanding why. If they bring in a carbon tax, you know, that's another impost on the Australian people that find it hard to put food on the table, put a roof over the head. Isn't it funny that I heard about this years ago, about this carbon tax that they're wanting to, and they said, well, look, go out and buy some land because this is going to be a big issue, and so you can use it as carbon credits, offset. And
this is while you were in Parliament, wasn't it?
No. This was before I was in Parliament. It was around about 2010, 2011, around about the time. And I was told about it then. And I thought, what are you talking about? I had no idea. So it was about a money-making exercise. And this is why the carbon credits, this is why people who have industries and they're emitting all these carbon emissions, that they can offset it by land that's been bought probably around in Africa. See, a lot of land has been bought in Africa. So other countries offset the carbon credits by this land in Africa. And this is what Bill Shorten wanted to do. He wanted to send Australian dollars over to Africa to offset our carbon credits, carbon dioxide. So my argument is that I think this has all been set up for big corporations, big companies make a lot of money out of it because billions of dollars have been put into the renewables and people are making money out of it. Remember when we had the scam about the ozone layer? You may remember this. And about the gases in the refrigerators.
Yeah, CFCs, yeah.
Right? So next thing, what they say, you have to get rid of your fridges. So they'll be outdated by a certain period of time. So that created an industry of more jobs, creating more different fridges. So companies, when we have unemployment is getting higher because the jobs aren't there, and we're actually changing from the workforce that we have to a lot of, what's the word for it, mechanised.
Automation.
Automation, right? Yeah. So therefore, you actually have to create jobs. It's like your iPhone. Remember the TV. Remember the analogue phone that we have. And so the government's changed the policies to get rid of that phone. So we had to all change to a different phone, a whole different TV set, because it keeps companies and jobs going. This is no different to what they've done. They've created another industry to keep employment, keeping these companies going so they can continually are changing their product all the time.
Peter,
it's money-making exercise.
I got to ask the question, if you were to put the money that we're currently spending on environmental change, how would you spend it? Because I look and I think there are so many better ways to spend it if you want to clean up your environment.
Well, two things. Well, I'd like to come back to that question because there was some other interesting things in that question, but your question, say the 400 million that's going to be spent on the Great Barrier Reef, there are no shortage of environmental problems in Australia that we could spend $400 million on. For example, the problem of noxious weeds, which most people in the city don't know about. Out on the rangeland, there's terrible problems with introduced weeds, just total environmental collapse. And so there's lots of those things that it could be spent on that would actually solve an environmental problem, whereas I don't think the reef is a particular problem. But coming back to that question, how do you get the two sides to necessarily agree? And maybe you can never get them to totally agree, but actually when you look at the difference between somebody who believes in climate change and somebody who's sceptical, almost nobody, including myself, is an expert on all of climate science.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a fair bit about the reef, but I don't know everything about the reef. So in the end, most people, whether they believe or not, depends on, do they trust the science organisations? The people who really believe, they trust those organisations so that when they say the temperature's going up and it's caused by carbon dioxide, they say, well, I believe them, they're scientists, I should believe them. But people like myself have grown sceptical of the trustworthiness of those organisations, which doesn't mean to say that I think that everything is wrong, it's just that I don't know what is right and what is wrong. So the only solution is to ultimately make the science organisation trustworthy again. If you went back 50 years, people used to believe scientists. They no longer do, unfortunately, especially when it's anything associated with the environment. And this is why we've got to get it so that science is reliable, so that we can say, well, you know, these are trustworthy people, like, you know, there are certain professions which we still trust. We've got to get them like that again.
I don't think there's 10 of us in this room here. I know there's only 3 of us on screen, but there's not a person in this room, and everybody belongs to this political party. There's not one person that wouldn't try their best to do something for this environment. And that can be a raft of different things. I think, you know, we can do our part by not throwing cigarette butts out the window. We can do our part by going picking up litter off the streets, or if you see it on the beach, pick it up. I think there are so many other ways in which we can clean this planet, because we're a bunch of dirty buggers. Let's think about it. We are. We're a filthy race.
Well, that's true, but Australia is particularly clean.
Some other countries, yes.
You know.
Yeah, we are particularly clean, but we're still filthy buggers, and we can do a whole lot more.
It can be done better. Yes, that's right. But when you look at what countries are like now, you know, I'm originally from the UK a very, very long time ago, and I remember when I left the UK, the Houses of Parliament were black. They were black because of all the pollution that was in the London air. And now they're white sandstone. You know, the amount of cleaning up that's been done with technology over the last 50 years is quite remarkable. The sugarcane farmers in North Queensland are so much cleaner now in whatever they do than they were. You know, when I was a kid growing up in Innisfail, cane farmers would roll car bodies over the creek banks and this type of stuff. They never do that type of thing anymore. And they're very careful with the use of pesticides. They're very careful with the use of fertilisers. So all these things are now a lot better. There are certainly much more problems in developing countries, especially with, say, pollution of plastics, where they don't have rubbish dumps. So everything that gets chucked away goes down the river and then it goes out to sea.
Yeah.
So
out of sight, out of mind. Yeah. Okay, 1300 857 466. We do have some other calls. We'll roll through these quickly. Let's go to the blue line. Tracy is from Teddington. Is that right, Tracy? I think she's there. Hi, Trace. No, we'll go to the orange line. Let's go to Jamie. Hi, Jamie.
G'day, mate. How are you?
Very good. Now, you want to talk about the Olympics. Are you pro-Olympics or anti-Olympics?
Definitely anti, mate. There's 4 things I want to get through, and I'll be very quick as soon as I can, right?
Righto.
The first one, UN, Pauline, straight out, and you know that for a fact. We need to get out of that right now, correct?
Oh, too right. I've been saying that for the last 23 years. Get out of it.
Absolutely, and I'm totally with you 100%. The second one, coal, straight away, back in, 100%.
Us too.
I've got no
100%.
problem. You know that the coal-fired power stations that they're building around the world is unbelievable. We're actually not building any new ones.
They are absolutely popping up like mushrooms everywhere. And why
European
doesn't our
Union,
stupid
yes,
ScoMo
27 at the
understand
moment. Yes, I know. We're fools.
Yeah. Okay, the third one is our games. Can you tell me if it's fact or fiction that any country that has hosted an Olympic Games has actually made a net profit? I don't think so.
Can't.
No, I couldn't say. We put up the figures before and I can't believe that they have. Even I asked Coates about...
And why I say that, Pauline, a lot of countries, for example, say spend $3 billion on it and they may get 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 million. It's a net loss, and it always has been. There's nothing we gain out of this whatsoever for Australia. It's a loss. It's not a win-win.
Jamie, the average cost in the last 60 years, we're talking 60 years, Summer Olympics, has been $12.5 billion Australian dollars, that is. $12.5 billion Australian dollars over the last 60 years to host it.
Yeah, to host the Olympics.
Pauline, why can't they see this? It is just, it's so transparent. Why can't they see it?
because it's a big push for the big business end of town. They're going to make a lot of money out of it, selling their product. It's an impost on the Australian people, the taxpayer, and also the people in Queensland who are going to be footing the bill with this. And when the local government authorities are backing this, and they're talking about 77 councils across the state of Queensland are backing this, are they truly representing the people who are in the rural and regional areas that can't get a maternity ward, for delivery babies, about hospitals, schools, roads, bridges, nursing homes? They're fed up with the southeast corner getting everything, and their tax dollars are going down here, and they're not getting the services they require. I don't blame them.
And I only saw this week, Jamie, when you have a look in the Courier Mail, there's a front page story saying that a woman waited 8 years for corrective breast surgery after cancer. Now, what sort of world are we in?
I know, exactly right. We don't listen to the actual reality of all this, do we? We just see the games and think how good it is for the state. Look, put us on the map. We're such a good state. We can do this. We can do that.
Jamie,
that's
it'll
not
be
the
the
picture. That's not the reality, mate.
Transgender games by
Jamie,
2030.
you've got one more.
So,
Okay, what's your last one?
Okay. Pauline, the last one, I know we can't put a figure on how much these fires have cost down the eastern seaboard, but have you noticed that, I might be wrong, and correct me if I am, Pauline, has any other country come in and said, look, you guys have really had a bad moment, we're going to donate all this to you, we're going to give you so much money like we do to the UN and other countries? No one has, have they?
No, just Indonesia sent over 40 people to help firefighters, but other than that, and also
but Pauline, the biggest picture is how much have we sent overseas to other countries?
I know. Although, I've got to say,
my heart being Australian, it really does.
No, there are other countries that have actually had donations, and one schoolgirl, I think it was Indonesia, that did a fundraise and raised some money and sent it over here for the firefighters. So it has happened. You got the individuals, possibly not the governments, but I know that individuals have donated to the Australian for the bushfires.
Jamie?
So to those people, thank you.
Got to run, but thanks for the call, mate.
Thanks, mate. See ya.
See ya. 1300 857 466. It is a big topic. Queenslanders, there's people on the Gold Coast that don't even want it. We had the Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast only, 2 years ago? Was it 2 or 1? I can't even think now, but there are so many businesses.
So memorable.
Yeah. Couldn't even sell the tickets out. And that's Commonwealth Games. Now, the Olympics is on steroids. And if you can't sell Commonwealth Game tickets, God knows how you're going to sell them to the Olympics as well. 1300 857 466. Let's just see. I think I've got Tracy back. G'day.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Trace.
Hi. How are you? Good evening, Pauline.
Hello,
James.
Tracy. Hi. Where are you from?
Maryborough.
Oh, Maryborough. God, someone's written here
Yes,
Tennington.
Maryborough.
Where the hell's Tennington? You look.
Well, it's a southern suburb of Maryborough, I guess you'd say.
What?
Yeah.
Tennington is it?
Round the cane field.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, now we've learned something. Right. Thanks, Trace. Now, you want to talk about the Olympics?
Yeah. No, look, just to say that I don't support it. I think there's a lot of people do, and listening to your previous caller, and given all the statistics on it, it's seriously not a good thing.
No, we
It's
haven't
only
had
going
anyone
to be-
who
it's
is
only going to
supporting
be-
it. Yeah, everyone has.
Sorry?
No, we haven't had anyone who does support it. No, the previous
Yeah,
caller,
exactly.
he's against it. So no one's
Yeah.
supporting it.
Well, it's
That's
only-
why John Coates has
that's
come
it.
to see me, because he knows that the people of Australia, and especially Queensland, are backing me. That's why he had to come and see
Well,
me.
it's only going to benefit one small area of Queensland, and that's just not the whole of Queensland.
If that. I don't even think people in Brisbane really want it. More than 50% of people have said they don't
Probably
want it.
not.
No, that's exactly right.
Probably not.
Even the smart bloke on the end here, the scientist, says he doesn't want it.
Oh, well, he's smart.
He is smart, isn't he?
That's good. So I just wanted to let Pauline know I joined the One Nation Party about 18 months ago.
Oh,
And
thank
what
you.
tipped me over was when I think you were in the Senate trying to pass a halt to the foreign aid going overseas and to help our North Queensland people
Flood
because
victims.
of the devastating floods they had up there.
Yes, that was 12 months ago, actually.
Huge, huge losses. So devastating, and that did it to me. I thought, no, no politicians here are looking after us apart from yourself.
Well, I appreciate your compliment, and I will continue fighting for the Australian people and our country. And thank you for joining the party, and I encourage anyone else, if you want to have that voice in Parliament, you need to support us, and please look at joining the party, and it all helps. It really does help, and your membership is what we need to get the party registered in all states. So please join, ensure that we do have that registration. That's the only way we can stand for candidates for Parliament in state and federally. So please, your membership is very much appreciated.
Thanks, Trace. Enjoy it up there in Maryborough.
Exactly. All right.
Thanks, Tracy.
Have a good night.
See ya.
Thank you.
1300 857 466 is our telephone number. That's very simple. You can do that. Tracy's been on the phone. Let's go to Matthew. Matthew, you're in Spearwood, correct?
Yes, correct.
G'day.
Now,
how are you going, Pauline?
WA. I don't know, though. I just.
Yeah, so I'm a WA supporter. So basically, I've got a question to ask you, Pauline. What is your stance on the religious discrimination bill?
We haven't had a chance to actually have a look at it. The government has reworked it. It hasn't come to the Senate, so they're probably still reworking it. But I'm yet to see it.
What would your opinion be on it if it is like how they say it is at the moment, or even mended? It's still pretty bad, I feel. Like, it's very discriminative that someone can, for their religious views, depict as someone's medical care. Now, to me, as a politician, how do you feel as a woman? How would you feel about that, Pauline?
Well, I don't think the religious view should come into it. If you're applying for a job, so whether it's in a medical profession, that type of thing, I think that person should be able to do the job and carry it out to the best of their ability. If you're going to get a person that comes in to do a job as a nursing job and they say, look, I can't do that because of my religious point of view, sorry, you shouldn't be getting the job. The same as in these schools. If you actually go to be a teacher in a Catholic school, and I'll say that is a Catholic school, you actually have to understand and appreciate the teachings of that school. That's why it is a Catholic school. So if you don't believe in the teachings of the Catholic religion, you shouldn't be getting a job there, because you can't uphold the beliefs of the school, and that's why parents send their children to a Catholic school.
Well, it'd be no different if someone tried to get a job here who was largely supportive of the Greens. It just wouldn't work.
Well, I wouldn't have them in the office, so why would I encourage someone else to take on someone if they don't believe in your views, what you stand for? And I'm sick of this discrimination. Everything's about discrimination these days. I'm sorry, it's either you can do the job, you believe in what you're doing. If not, you don't get the job.
Totally agree. 1300 857 466. Thanks, Matt, for the call. We've got another environmental question. This is probably a good one for you, Peter. I've got Ruth. G'day, Ruth.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, hello, Pauline. Now, just a quick one for Peter Ridd. We have a farm near Warwick, and I'm dealing with prickly pears, so you're spot on about the noxious weeds.
Yeah.
So I might contact you later to find out if you can point me in the right direction. That would be terrific.
Yeah, certainly do that. Contact this office here. But yeah, it's a huge problem, and most people in the city, when you talk about the problem of noxious weeds, they just think of a prickle in their garden. They have no idea about the massive amount of time that farmers spend trying to control not just weeds but feral animals. It's a huge environmental problem which we essentially ignore.
So
we're very close.
Ruth, you want to know how to get rid of prickly pear?
Yes,
the plant.
Pauline, please.
Well, do you know, Peter?
Well,
why can't you tell Ruth now?
I can't say a lot now, though. I have to confess an interest here, because in fact one of the things that I've been doing, in fact before I was fired and since I was fired, is working on robotic methods of controlling weeds. So it's going to happen in the next few years. Robotic methods where cameras take pictures of the ground, and then a sprayer automatically kills these things. That's going to be happening in the next. The group that I'm working with is doing that, and there are other groups around the world. So I'm hoping that will become a benefit to farmers sometime in the future.
Hey Ruth, now I know why he wants to talk to you off camera, so he can actually use your farm as a trial farm. What do you reckon?
We've been working down at Gundawindi actually.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so not far away from Warwick, yeah.
Ruth?
Yeah, well, the rain's coming from Gundawindi, so I like Gundawindi. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, we
Thank
were
you.
we were working on Harrisia cactus down at Gundawindi. That was the weed of favour down there. So it's a huge problem for everybody. Every farmer has got their favourite weed.
Well, we've
Yes,
got your
I
number.
think-
We've got your number, Ruth. Anyway, so if Peter's got
Oh, yeah.
anything further to tell you, he can give you a call back. How's that?
Oh, fantastic. And Pauline, thank you so much. Really, Malcolm Roberts is an excellent addition to our Parliament. I voted for him, and I was so ecstatic when he got in the first time, and I was very happy when he got in the second time.
I know the feeling.
Yes. No, I'm an engineer. I've got an engineering background, and I'm just so distressed by the state of what passes as science these days. But anyway, on a more practical note, Pauline, are you gearing up for the Queensland election?
Oh, definitely. Most definitely. So we're standing candidates across the state. We've already got some
Good.
endorsed. We're
Still
still looking for candidates. So if you think that you make a good candidate for One Nation, please contact the head office and put your name down, and you'll be interviewed. But if you don't believe in what One Nation stands for, if you haven't got the determination to fight for the people and stand up for what you believe in, don't bother.
Look, if you've got a lengthy criminal background, just leave us alone.
No.
I'm not interested.
Or bankrupt, or
Yeah.
all these problems, police record, or if you can't, if you don't want to fight for the people, not interested. But those people, and I know there's some out there, but I can't do my job and work for you if I don't have the good people beside me and get more and more people elected to Parliament. And that's why I want people, come and stand beside me, fight with me, and make a difference.
Well, I think you've got a candidate in my electorate. I've just moved out to just a little farm outside Pratton and my life's work is now to pick prickly pear off the land. That's what it is. We're trying to get our goats sweet at the table. They're too smart. But anyway, I think you've already got a candidate here, but I'm happy to volunteer to help get them into Parliament. So,
fantastic, Ruth. That's really appreciate that, and that means more to me. If you can't be a candidate, that help and assistance behind the scenes is what really benefits the candidate. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No, I'm really appreciative of you and the One Nation Party. And yes, Malcolm Roberts is a standout. He's protecting science. He's protecting everything that is dear to me. And, just one more point, and then I'll go, I promise. Nutrition science has been totally corrupted through the years. We're, so if nutrition science can be so misguided, climate science can be corrupted and misguided too. So that's all I'll say. And that'll spark an extra, that'll spark more comments on Facebook, I'm sure. But no, I'm really pleased with what you're doing in Parliament, and I couldn't be happier. So
Good on you, Ruth.
Thanks, Ruth.
Thanks,
Bye.
Hey. Hey, listen, I want to raise something that obviously we've got coronavirus on our doorstep. We've had an enormous amount of tourism drop off from international travellers as a result of the bushfires, which thankfully the media went out and told they're Australia burnt to the ground and all our koalas are all dead, bar one in Yeppoon. But honestly, we've really got to change the way of thinking of our media, and also we need to change the thought patterns of people who take holidays traditionally overseas, holiday here at home, while we in the tourist industry throughout Queensland and the rest of Australia really need a hand, because in Cairns alone, they lost 25,000 nights of accommodation as a result of the fires and coronavirus. That's huge.
Yeah, it is huge.
And it's
Tourism.
impacting on fishermen. We've seen the decimation of our fishing industry because of bad legislation and bad policies that have been trying to be implemented across the country, and in particular Queensland. But when you lose that tourism that normally comes in from overseas, and they would typically buy the coral trout and the barramundi and all the fresh fish, and they're not doing it anymore, there's some major repercussions across particularly Queensland. I know other states, Victoria and New South Wales, are doing it tough as well. Holiday at home, try it this year. Even go and see a travel agent. They're doing it tough too because all their clients have dropped off. Go and see your travel agent. See what deals are on, because there are some enormous, great special packages. You must have empty beds up around your place.
Well, certainly in North Queensland, yes. I mean, one of the things that the tourist industry complains about is every time there's bad news about the reef, and then the government makes it even worse by having an official report saying how terrible the state of the reef is.
Yeah.
And of course, it's scaring tourists away. And if you talk to the tourist operators up there, they'll tell you that all of the tourists, when they go out and see the reef, which is just fantastic, they say, "Oh, we thought it was all dead. We were really happy that it looks so good." And then there's another class of tourists, apparently, who are what they call last chance tourists. They're going to go and see the reef before it's completely dead. So sort of bucket list type stuff. But the fact is that the reef is in fantastic shape, and we've told the world, we've somehow managed to convince the world this thing, which is obviously absolutely fantastic, is on its last leg. It's an amazing feat of marketing that we've managed to do.
Well, the same with koalas. They think they're unicorns now.
Yes.
Gone.
Yes, that's right. And there's
That's the
there's
media.
certainly
That's
I
the
know.
media. Sensationalise it. So,
Anyway, look, if you want to come and holiday up around my area, this is Great Keppel Island. Free plug for Great Keppel. And also Yeppoon, that's my favourite spot. Have you got a favourite spot in Queensland, Pauline?
I love it all. Even when we went up to the tip, isn't it
yeah.
beautiful? Or,
That's
up
a bucket
through
list
there.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is, to actually go up through there. Even to go out to country towns like Winton and Longreach.
Yep.
The Hall of Fame at Longreach, that's fantastic.
And
You've
the
got
dinosaurs
at
Winton are amazing.
It
That is really
it
good.
is amazing.
Yep.
So you go out and see these things. I think these country and rural areas, I think they're beautiful. And go down to Bathurst. I think that's a great town, Bathurst. I like it in New South Wales and the coastal towns. Look, Australia has got so much to offer. Whether you want to go to the coastal, whether you want to go to the country towns, you've got the Dubbo Zoo. I'm just saying this for these country, rural and regional towns. They do it tough at times. So if you can go out and support them, fantastic. Why would anyone want to go to Bali? I cannot believe people wanting to go to Bali.
Can I quote you on something?
Yeah, what?
Monday, I think your term was, it's shit.
What?
Or was that something else you said? Anyway, we're getting close to...
No, that was the fish. We bring in all this rubbish from overseas. 70% of our seafood we import from overseas.
And we
We've
used
got all
we used to be a net exporter, and now we're a net importer. We've halved the size of the fishing industry in the last 15 years. It's
Through
and of course
government
it's
policy, regulations.
That's right. And what's happened is that instead of fishing with a nice and controlled way in Australia, we now import from Thailand, where there's far fewer controls and much fewer environmental. So we basically export the problem, believing that pretending that we're actually doing something good for the environment. When
We've
we're
got
not.
all this Australian fish out there that they can't send overseas. So when you walk in a fish and chip shop, you tell them, you ask them, where's the fish from? Make sure it's an Australian fish. If not, tell them you won't buy it. So that rubbish will go into the bin, and tell them you want Australian fish.
Yeah, if you want to support those fishermen here in Australia, there are co-ops. Surprise, surprise. I know they don't advertise, they don't spend a huge amount of money, but there are fish co-ops right up and down the east coast where those trawlers and fishing boats come in, and they will happily sell you the freshest of fish that doesn't get...
trawlers.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's an interesting statistic about fishing. Australia has a lot of ocean, especially we've got Macquarie Island and various islands around the place, and 200 nautical kilometres around that. We have the third biggest amount of ocean in the world by country. We're about 64th in terms of the amount of fish caught. So we're 64th country.
And I'll tell you something, if we don't utilise the fishing grounds that we do and get the amount of fish that we're entitled to, that then gives other countries the right to come and fish in our waters under these international agreements that we have.
Okay.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't. No.
Yeah.
It's
So
something we
I don't
face.
trust the governments, as I say all the time. They think we're bloody fools. But anyway,
All right.
it's trying to keep up with all this information to inform
know.
you so we know what's happening in our country.
Yeah, 1300 857 466. There's a lot you've got to take in, isn't there?
Well, there's quite a lot. I've got so much on the go at the moment. So I've got the family law inquiry, the dairy industry inquiry that's coming up. I'm on the Indigenous board, the Working Indigenous board, so I'm on that as well. And then I put up my bill last week for the indoctrination education bill, and that's yet to go to the floor of Parliament and debate that. So that was quite interesting, where I'm saying kids are being indoctrinated. And I put it this, there was a case in the UK, Stuart Dimmock. Did you hear about it?
No.
He complained and took the school to the courts because they were not giving a balanced view of climate change. So anyway, the court ruled in favour of Stuart Dimmock. And because it was in the legislation over there that they had to give a balanced view, and they didn't. We haven't got that in legislation here. That's where we need to force the schools to give a balanced view.
I've got one more call because we're about to wrap up. It's almost 8 o'clock. I've got Mel. Hello, Mel. Are you there?
Hello, how you going?
Hi, Mel.
Mel's in the Hunter Valley.
Oh, hi.
Good. I'd just love to start off with, Pauline, I love your work, and I love what you are doing in interest of all Australians.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I've got just a couple of questions. My first question, so this is all about Agenda 21, which can be very confronting for a lot of audience, so bear with me.
Yes.
So my first question, where are we at the moment with Agenda 21? Are we still hitting our 2030, what they aimed for goal? Is it pressing back? Is it pressing forward? Do you know where we are at really with what their eyes are with Agenda 2030?
Well, it seems that we're still going ahead with it. If you have a look at the water, they under Agenda 21, Chapter 18, they sent people out to look at privatising water throughout the world, apart from third world countries. That's exactly what they've done. We haven't kept up with the water infrastructure that we've needed. They've changed the policy with regard to water. Howard in 2004, separating water from land. The Water Act of 2007, the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. So that's all about controlling water. We've got 20% of our water is foreign owned, and 15% of our water licence is foreign owned. So they want to privatise water in Australia, and you can do that, raise the cost of water when it is least available, and that's exactly what they have done. If you look under that, also Agenda 21 was cutting the herd stocks, so cattle and sheep and that type of thing. They want people to eat less meat. And that's exactly what they've done. So the sheep, we've gone from about 170 million down to 63 million, and we've dropped about 10 million head of cattle in the last, we're down to about 23 million head of cattle in Australia, so we've actually reduced those numbers there. I believe they're pushing ahead with it, and it's also destroying. Agenda 21 takes away the sovereignty of a nation. So you've got countries in America now saying they've torn it up. They said we're not going to be a part of this anymore. A couple of states there. I think it is detrimental to us to be a part of this, and I think we need to get out of it.
Hey, Mel, got to run because Mr. Music has just gone on, but thank you for the call, and we will continue following Agenda 21. Mate, they cut the feed, I'm sorry, so we're going to have to run, but we will get back to that Agenda 21 matter in the future, and of course, thank you to everyone who called tonight. Thank you, Peter Reid, for coming. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mel, I'm not... Well, I am the bastard in this organisation, aren't I? That's what they always say. Peter, thank you.
My pleasure.
And thank you for coming down all the way from your hometown, Townsville. You're still in Townsville, aren't you?
Yep.
They haven't kicked you out of Townsville yet, have they?
No.
Good.
Sorry.
If you are the Chancellor of a university out there and you would like to employ this gentleman sitting to my left, please give us a call or get in touch with Peter. I think it'd be great to have him on your staff. Anyway, or any school out there. You never know. You might get someone who wants to give him a job.
All
So
right.
anyway, it's been great. There's so many issues and topics out there. We never even got ahead about the Aboriginal issue that I raised last week.
Do we need to go through another week of media?
So there's so many things there, but people want to know what's going on.
I know,
We're trying to keep them
I'm only
informed.
playing funny buggers. Thank you very much for everyone's participation tonight. If you've got anything you'd like to deal with, go to the One Nation website, which is onenation.org.au. Otherwise, you can email Pauline privately, which is senator.hanson@aph.gov.au. Everything's kept strictly confidential unless you want us to take it further.
And become a member, become a candidate, or become a volunteer. Love to have you on board.
Look at that
Anyway.
similarity. You can get them online. The violence. Good night, everybody.
Night, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.